A worm farming friend of mine on Twitter, Michelle, made an observation that her compost bin was very, very wet. Now, it turns out that the type of bin she has is the type of bin we call a Dalek bin here in the UK, just because of its broad base and narrowing towards the top, which roughly resembles the shape of a Dalek. Now, I've got one of these, and they can be a bit of a pain to manage, really. They do have a tendency to get very, very wet. And the main issues I found with them was, one was drainage and the second was ventilation. Now if I just pop the harvesting access door here at the bottom, you'll see the looser material at the top is as far down as I've got with the fork, and the more compressed material at the bottom is pretty much finished compost now, which is very wet, but it's still reasonably crumbly. And there's also worms living down in this part of the bin, which according to the textbooks they shouldn't be, but one of the things you'll find with worms is they've never read a textbook in their life, so they just do what they want. They don't know how to behave, really. You'll see leaves all around this bin, and that's because the insides of this bin can get very wet. There is a tendency for worms to escape, especially when the moisture content is very high. So I leave a lot of leaves around this type of bin, and any worms that do escape will make their way into the pile of leaves. They're out of sunlight and daylight, they're reasonably covered from the birds, so they tend to be quite happy there, so it's easy to round up any escapees. Now you can see what I've done here. I've propped my bin up on 3 bricks, which allows for a space underneath the base of the bin, and that allows moisture to drain and also allows air to get underneath the bin. The plastic that you see around the bin is really just to dissuade any, that's just around the outside edge of the base of the bin, and it's really just to dissuade any mice from trying to get underneath there and live, but I don't know if it works or not. I haven't seen any mice in a long time around this bin, so maybe it does. Now that's the bin, and you'll see the plastic bag I've got attached to it's caught underneath the lid, and it's covering up a very roughly cut ventilation hole. This was an old pair of tights. I cut a section out, glued around the hole to keep out fruit flies, and as you can see it's had better days, and I really should address fixing that, but it works, so for now there's no great urgency. Now you'll see the side of this bin, it's very dry, the sides, which is good. That will put worms off trying to climb up the sides of the bin into the lid. Very often when you lift the lid off this type of bin, you'll see a lot, if you have worms in your compost, you'll see a lot of worms in the lid. They go exploring because it's easy for them, because the sides are wet. It's dry today, but that wouldn't always be the case. Whenever I add 1 or 2 buckets of food to this, the moisture content given off by the activity of the microbes and worms breaking down the material I've added does create a lot of moisture inside the bin, and the sides will get very wet again. So that's the idea of trying to add more ventilation. But as you can see, the material itself is quite good. It's crumbly, even though it's very wet, and there's a lot of worms throughout the bin, and they're quite evenly spread throughout the bin. There's a lot of isopods in here, and that's because the last 2 feedings I gave this bin, I added quite a lot of cardboard to help to soak up any excess moisture, and the worms love the cardboard and the isopods love the cardboard. You'll also see there's quite a lot of springtails in the bin. So all in all, it's well balanced. There's a lot of different composters living in here, which is a good sign. So it's not favouring one composter over another. It's reasonably well balanced in that sense. And the next feed I put into this bin will probably be mostly cardboard again, to try and soak up some of the moisture. And then after that I'll probably add another bucket or 2 of scraps that I get from a large home that's quite near here. what I do is this bin composts their scraps, and then I give them back the finished vermicompost at the end, so their gardener adds it to their garden. So as you can see, yeah, it's a reasonably healthy bin. That's a mango seed with a slug attached. I'll just get rid of him. And as you can see, in the seed itself has been worked on, softened up by the action of the isopods breaking down the lignin. And if I crack it open, inside the pip is almost gone, and there's one worm there. There's quite a light coloured cocoon, which means that's reasonably freshly laid. And yeah, so that's really it. I just was prompted by Michelle's tweet to actually go and have a look at mine and see what state it was in. I thought I'd share it with you. It's two big issues: try and get some ventilation or more ventilation into the bin, and try and get the bin off the ground somehow to improve the drainage. That's it.